I'm done being the quiet nail they hammered down, I told myself, palms steady on the table as laughter ricocheted around my daughter's living room. From here on out, I swing the hammer. They'd strung Edison bulbs across the backyard like a low sky, and the grill hissed with fat the way summer does in Ohio. Loud, showy, a little cruel. Country on the Bluetooth, kids chasing fireflies, paper plates bending under brisket. I stood near the fridge, letting the coal roll out each time someone went hunting for another beer. My hands, carpenter's hands that earned their knots one joist at a time, rested on a tray of deviled eggs Linda had copied from her mother's old recipe card. My late wife's handwriting, looped and neat, smiled at me through plastic wrap. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Dad, sit, Linda said, too bright, the way people talk to old dogs who still remember the hunt. She used to ride on my shoulders while I framed houses. Now she kept checking if I was in the way. Peter raised his can. His voice carried. It always did. To new starts, he said, and folks cheered. And to this house, our house. He grinned. That realtor grin he wears like a polished belt buckle. Couldn't have done it without all our hard work. All our hard work. The numbers surfaced like an old, cold fish, $75,000. The gift, I told myself, was an investment in family, the kind that would keep Thanksgiving on the same porch for decades. I'd unloaded that money like lumber into a pickup, knowing exactly what every dollar had cost me. Backsplashes installed on Sundays, roofs patched between snow squalls, fingers scarred smooth by sandpaper and time. Someone asked Peter if the mortgage rate scared him. He laughed. Scared? Nah, we got this. He leaned in toward the circle, and the circle leaned back like he was a son. Besides, he said, loud enough to turn heads, we're the ones carrying the old man now. He lives off us, far as I can tell. The clink in the yard died. Even the grill seemed to hush, an animal surprised. Linda's eyes flash froze, then darted to me. A couple guests pretended to check their phones. Peter, she whispered. What? He shrugged, mouth cocked. I'm just saying he doesn't pay rent. He's always here. Somebody's got to say it. I could have told them about the envelopes of cash I slid under their closing papers, about the clause I'd tucked into the deed at Gregory's urging, a quiet sentence like a hidden joist. No sale without donor consent. A safety rail I prayed I'd never need. I could have told them I keep my groceries simple and my pride expensive. But there's a kind of silence that isn't surrender. It's measuring. Any carpenter will tell you, measure twice, cut once. I picked up my wife's recipe card and slipped it into my shirt pocket. I'm headed out, I said. My voice was still, the kind of still that comes after you've aligned a door and the latch clicks. Thanks for the food. Ah, come on, Bill, a neighbor said. Don't be thin-skinned. Peter smirked. He'll be back tomorrow. He always is. I walked past the grill, past the Edison bulbs, out to my truck. The air smelled like cut grass and sugar. I slid behind the wheel and let the door thump shut. That old F-150 cab has its own acoustics, tinny, honest. My hammer lay on the passenger seat, head nicked, handle oiled smooth by decades. I bought it the week Linda was born, when I swore I'd build a world for her that wouldn't splinter. I set my hand on the hammer and felt my heart slow, one rung at a time. People think age makes you soft. Age makes you precise. You stop swinging at everything and wait for the moment that matters. That night, I drove the long way home, past a high school football field where the lights still shine for nobody, past the church with the flickering sign that keeps promising grace, past the lake where the water holds the moon like a secret. I replayed Peter's words, sanded them flat, until only the grain showed, broke, burden, useless. At my apartment, a square place with a stubborn window unit and floors that tell you when you're not alone, I opened the old cigar box where I keep papers that can change a day, insurance cards, a photograph of Linda missing 2 teeth, and a copy of the deed I signed with trembling pride. The clause looked back at me like a quiet friend. Consent required. My consent or no sale. A joist nobody sees until the floor gives way. I brewed diner coffee in my dented percolator and sat at the table, Recipe card beside the deed, my wife's loops and the lawyer's serif letters like past and present shaking hands. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring to the last shiver. It buzzed again, same number. I answered. William, said a voice I hadn't heard since we buried Mary, and I needed someone to translate sorrow into paperwork. It's Gregory. We need to talk tonight. My hand tightened around the hammer's haft. What is it? He drew a breath that said the next sentence would tilt the room. Peter's trying to sell the house, he said, and he didn't tell you. I stared at the receiver long after Gregory's voice faded. The line gone quiet except for the faint buzz of Ohio static. Sell the house? Without so much as a word to me? My gut burned, the same way oak smolders slow in a wood stove, long before you see the flame. I set the phone down, palms flat against the kitchen table. My wife's recipe card stared up from its plastic sleeve, a relic of dinners when laughter was clean, when Linda was still a girl who believed I could fix anything with a hammer and a prayer. I thought giving her that money would carry the warmth of those days forward. Instead, it built a stage for my humiliation. The percolator hissed behind me. Coffee sputtered like an old man coughing. I poured a mug black, scalding. My reflection swam on the surface. Gray hair, crow's feet, a carpenter's jaw. I'd looked worse after 12-hour shifts, but tonight I looked like a man being erased. Gregory had been my anchor through worse storms, helping me through probate after Mary passed, straightening out the paperwork I could barely read through tears. He wasn't a man to call without cause. If he said Peter was trying to sell, it meant papers had already been signed, signatures already curling in ink. I dialed him back. Greg, it's me. Tell me everything. His voice was low, like we were boys again scheming in the back pew. Peter's drowning in debt. Will. Credit cards, some failed investments. He's leveraged everything but the clothes on his back. I saw the listing myself. Your house on the market, quiet as a thief. Your house. He said it like it still belonged to me. Maybe it always did. He can't sell without my consent, I muttered. Gregory exhaled. Exactly. That clause you let me sneak into the deed. It's the only joist holding this floor up. You got power, Will, more than he knows. I ran a thumb over the deed copy, tracing the words I'd half forgotten. Sale contingent on donors' written approval. Most folks would have skimmed past it. Peter sure did. I'll come by tomorrow, Gregory said. We'll talk options. Tonight, just breathe. But don't let him see you flinch. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, the hammer across my knees like a rifle. Out the window, a streetlight flickered, moths battering themselves against the glow. I thought of Peter's smirk, the way his words had gutted me in front of neighbors, Linda's silence hanging heavier than the insult. He thought he'd ripped me off like a check already cashed. He didn't know I'd kept a receipt. Sleep came late, shallow as a puddle. By dawn, I was up, pulling on jeans stiff from yesterday's sweat, boots that still held sawdust and seams. I drove to Gregory's office in the old brick courthouse square, where pigeons patrol the roof lines like judges. He spread the paperwork across his desk, the pages neat, merciless. He listed it through a buddy at the firm. Gregory said. Didn't even mention the clause. Figures he can charm his way past the details. Typical. I leaned in, scanning the numbers, the signatures, Peter's bold scrawl. Anger twisted in my chest, sharp but controlled. So he's already counting the money. Exactly. Gregory tapped the clause with his pen. But he doesn't get a dime without this. You've got the leverage now. Question is, how do you want to play it? Outside, the courthouse clock tolled 10. Each chime felt like a nail sliding into place. For 67 years, I'd built homes, raised beams, steady frames. Now it was time to build something else. Something stronger. I closed the folder, slid it back toward Gregory. We play it quiet, I said. Let him think he's ahead. Then we cut where it hurts. Gregory's eyes flicked up. A half smile, wary but proud. You sound like the man I remember. I stood, shoulders straight, as if I had just measured the first plank of a new project. My voice was even, but it carried steel. Peter wanted war when he shamed me in my own family. Fine, he'll get it, but it'll be by the book, every nail flush, every cut clean. I reached for the door, the courthouse hall stretching out like a tunnel. Behind me, Gregory called, "What's your first move?" I paused, one hand on the frame. "Simple," I said. I let him dig his hole. And when the echo of my boots faded, I knew I wasn't a nail anymore. I was the hammer, waiting to fall. By the time I pulled into my driveway, Peter's truck was already there, parked sideways like it owned the gravel. He was leaning against the hood, arms crossed, chewing on a toothpick like he'd just closed the biggest deal of his life. That salesman grin stretched wide, too wide, like a banner that might rip in the wind. "Morning, Bill," he said, as if last night had never happened. "Got a minute?" I killed the engine, stepped out slow, letting the crunch of my boots answer first. "What do you need?" He spread his hands, mock casual. "Look, about last night. Maybe I came off rough. Too much beer, you know how it goes. I just want us all to be on the same page." I stared at him. That line, "same page," sounded rehearsed, like a line from his realtor's pitch. He wasn't apologizing. He was preheating the oven. "Same page about what?" I asked. He leaned in, lowered his voice. "The house. You know, I've been thinking, market's hot right now. We could cash out, move somewhere bigger, better schools for the kids. It'd be a win for everyone." My chest tightened, but I kept my face stone. "Cash out." Peter nodded eagerly. "Yeah, and don't worry. I'll make sure you're comfortable. Always welcome with us. But we've got to move fast before rates climb. This is how families build real wealth, Bill. Generational stuff." The word scraped like sandpaper. Generational wealth. I'd spent a lifetime carving wood with my hands, not flipping houses with other people's money. "You've already listed it, haven't you?" I asked. His smirk faltered, then snapped back. "Well, technically, yeah, but that's just to get eyes on it. Nothing's final. Buyers are circling, though. Cash buyers. Once it closes, we're set." I let the silence hang, long enough for the birds overhead to fill it. He thought I was cornered, that I had nowhere else to stand. "You went ahead without asking me," I said, voice low. Peter's eyes narrowed. "Come on, Bill. It's not like that. You gave us that money. Gift, remember? This house is ours. You don't need to worry about the paperwork." But I did worry, more than he knew. The clause in the deed beat like a second pulse in my pocket. I stepped closer until my boots touched the shadow of his truck. "Let me give you some advice," I said. "When you build something on shaky ground, it doesn't matter how good the paint looks. Sooner or later, it falls." He chuckled, but it was thin. "You sound like a damn fortune cookie." He slapped the hood of his truck and climbed inside. "Don't get in the way, Bill. This is bigger than you now." The tires spit gravel as he tore off down the road. Dust hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table, pulled out the deed, and traced the clause with my thumb until the words blurred. My wife's recipe card sat beside it, her script a reminder of the family I thought I was building. Gregory's words echoed in my head. "You've got the leverage now." For years, I believed sacrifice was the highest form of love. Work yourself raw. Give again, never ask. But sitting there, the house quiet around me, I realized sacrifice without respect is just self-erasure. Peter hadn't just taken my money. He'd tried to erase me, and that was something I couldn't let stand. That afternoon, I drove out to the lake. The water was flat, gray as steel, the kind of calm that hides a riptide underneath. I walked the dock where Mary and I used to sit, feet dangling, kids squealing behind us. The boards creaked under my weight, reminding me everything built needs tending or it rots. I pulled out my phone and called Gregory. "It's time," I said. "Time for what?" he asked. "For me to stop being the man who swallows his pride. I want the trust papers drawn up. Everything goes to grandkids. Not a penny to Linda or Peter." Gregory was quiet a beat, then said, "You sure about that?" "Dead sure." The lake lapped soft against the dock, steady as breath. I looked at the hammer on my passenger seat. When I got back to the truck, the wood handle worn smooth, It had Bill Holmes, fixed brakes, carried weight without complaint. But it wasn't just a tool. It was a reminder I wasn't finished. By the time I turned the key, I knew. The next swing wouldn't be for building. It would be for justice. Gregory's office smelled like old books and stronger coffee, the kind that wakes you up before you drink it. He laid out the papers on his mahogany desk, neat stacks like rows of lumber waiting to be cut. "This is a trust," he said, sliding the folder toward me. "Everything you've got left, savings, retirement accounts, even that insurance policy, you can funnel it here. Beneficiaries, the grandkids, not Peter, not Linda." I ran my thumb along the edge of the folder. It felt like the ridge of a board before you plane it smooth. "So once this is signed, it's locked?" "Rock solid. They can scream, they can threaten, they can hire the slickest lawyer in Columbus. It won't change a thing." I nodded slowly. For years, my name had been tied to sacrifice, to giving without keeping. But here, in this room, my name was going to mean something else. Protection. I signed. The pen moved steady. No shake. The letters looked like they'd been carved into the page. Gregory leaned back, watching me. "You're calm. Most folks, they get shaky about cutting their kids out." I set the pen down. I gave them everything once. All it bought me was shame in my own daughter's house. The memory of Peter's words still stung like salt in a cut. He lives off us. The look on Linda's face, half pity, half embarrassment, had been worse. Gregory tapped the deed copy next. "Now, the clause, that's your lever. You block the sale. Peter's debts will bury him. And when he tries to claw his way out, well, there won't be much left to grab." I folded the papers, tucked them into the envelope. Let him try. I wanted to feel the floor give out under his feet. That night, I went back to my apartment, sat at the table with the hammer across my lap. I thought about the years I spent teaching Linda how to hold a saw steady, how to measure twice, cut once. I thought about Mary humming while she baked, sunlight slanting across the kitchen tile. Those memories were lumber I could still build from, even if the house had burned. But Peter, he was termites. He didn't just take. He hollowed things out until they looked solid from the outside, but crumbled when pressure hit. I stared at the trust papers, at my wife's recipe card beside them, and felt something settle in me. This wasn't vengeance for its own sake. This was balance. A frame leveled after a careless hand warped it. The phone buzzed. Linda's name lit the screen. For a moment I almost answered, but then I set it face down. She'd chosen her silence when Peter spat on me in front of everyone. Now she'd live in that silence a little longer. Out the window, the streetlight flickered again, moths beating their wings like tiny fists against the glow. Somewhere across town, Peter probably raised a glass to his next deal, thinking he had me boxed in. I smiled into the dark, a carpenter's smile. The kind you get when you know the joists are solid and the roof won't cave, at least not on you, because when the collapse comes, it'll be a ceiling that crashes down, and I'll be the one standing, hammer in hand, watching the dust settle. The next week rolled in heavy with August heat, the kind that makes the pavement shimmer and the air taste like rust. I kept my blinds half drawn, waiting. Peter didn't disappoint. He showed up mid-morning, his cologne hitting the stairwell before his knuckles hit my door. Sharp raps, salesman's rhythm. I let him knock twice before I opened. "Bill," he said, flashing teeth like he was posing for a billboard. "Mind if I come in?" I stepped aside, slow. "Suit yourself." He strutted to the table, eyed the hammer lying there, then looked back at me with that little curl of a smile. "Still holding on to that thing, huh? You know, some guys golf at your age. Some guys build," I said. He chuckled, sat, spread his hands like a poker player ready to deal. "Look, I'll cut straight. I've got an offer above asking. Cash. This could set us all up. New place, new start. You'll always have a room. Hell, I'll even put a workshop out back if it keeps you busy." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You need my signature." His smile froze a half second, then stretched wider. "Yeah, just a formality. We're family, right? You wouldn't block me on this. Not after all you've done for us." I let the silence drag, long enough for him to start shifting in his seat. "Funny," I said finally. "I don't remember you talking family when you called me useless in front of half the neighborhood." Peter's eyes flickered. "I was drunk. You know I didn't mean it." "But you said it." He exhaled sharp, palm slapping the table. "Bill, don't play stubborn. This is bigger than pride. If we don't sell, the bank's coming. They'll take it all. You'll have nowhere to sit for Thanksgiving, nowhere for the grandkids to run." I stepped closer, planted my hand on the table, close enough to see sweat bead at his temple. "That house doesn't move without my hand guiding it. You should have read the deed before you started counting dollar signs." His jaw tightened. "You'd ruin us just to get even?" I shook my head. "I'm not ruining anything. You built this mess. I'm just making sure it falls where it should." For the first time, his grin cracked. He stood quick, chair legs scraping. "Think about it," he snapped. "You'll regret this if you don't sign." He stormed out, the stairwell echoing his steps, the door downstairs slamming like a gavel. I picked up the hammer, weighed it in my hand. Not heavy, not really, just honest. Outside, the cicadas screamed, drowning the street in their electric buzz. He thought he'd rattle me. He thought fear would make me bend. But I'd spent a lifetime cutting against the grain, steady hands on stubborn wood. This wasn't fear rising in me. It was resolve, sharp and certain. And soon, Peter would learn the difference. I didn't see Peter for a few days after that blow-up at my table. The silence was louder than any threat he could have thrown. But I knew him. He was the kind of man who mistakes quiet for weakness, the kind who thinks persistence beats principle. The letter came first. Certified mail, bold print. His lawyer's name across the top. The words were dressed in legal clothes, but stripped down they were simple. Sign or step aside. They tried to sound official, but I could see the cracks. That clause, my clause, still like a steel beam through the whole thing. Without me, there was no sale. I called Gregory, read him the letter. He laughed, a dry sound that belonged in a courthouse hallway. "They're bluffing," he said. "That clause isn't suggestion. It's law. He can hire every shark in the state. It won't change a thing." "Good," I said, folding the letter into neat quarters. "Then I'll wait for him to show his teeth." And show them he did. That Friday, Peter dragged Linda into a diner on Main, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody's business before the coffee cools. I was already there, corner booth, reading the classifieds like I was hunting work. When Peter spotted me, he put on his stage voice. "Well, if it isn't the man of the hour," he boomed. Heads turned. Forks paused midair. Linda shrank beside him, but Peter leaned into it. "Folks, you're looking at the reason my family might lose our home. My father-in-law here. He'd rather cling to paperwork than see his grandkids safe." The room tightened, eyes darting between us. He wanted sympathy, a jury of neighbors nodding along. I set down my paper, folded it crisp. "You left out the part where I gave you $75,000 to buy that roof." I said, voice carrying just enough. "Or the part where you tried to sell it behind my back." "Tell the whole story, Peter, if you're telling it at all." A murmur rippled through the diner. A couple of the old guys at the counter smirked into their mugs. Peter's smile faltered just a twitch, but I saw it. Linda tugged at his sleeve. "Peter, please." But he waved her off, teeth flashing again. "Don't worry about him. He won't do anything. He's just trying to look important." I leaned forward, eyes locked on his. "You think silence means surrender. You'll learn different." The waitress refilled my cup like nothing had happened, but I could feel the shift. The public mask Peter wore had slipped, just for a second, and everybody in that diner caught a glimpse. He grabbed Linda's arm, dragged her toward the door. "Enjoy your coffee, Bill," he spat. "It might be the last thing you can afford." The bell above the door jingled weak, almost embarrassed. I sipped the coffee, bitter and clean, public humiliation #1, delivered by his own arrogance. And I hadn't even raised my voice. Back at home, I pinned his lawyer's letter to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a hammer. Every time I opened the door for milk, it stared at me, empty threats on crisp paper. Peter thought the law was a game he could rig. He didn't realize I'd already stacked the deck. And the longer he played, the deeper he sank. The next move was his, but the next cut would be mine. 2 weeks later, the cracks in Peter's smooth facade began to show. Word spreads fast in a small Ohio town, faster than gossip in a church parking lot. By then, everyone knew he'd tried to sell the house out from under me and that I'd stopped him cold. Realtors whispered, neighbors raised eyebrows, and every time he strutted into the hardware store, conversations went quiet. It was at the bank where the second humiliation landed. I was there to cash a modest check. Pension money, nothing fancy. The place smelled like polished wood and nervous sweat. Peter burst through the glass doors, suit a size too confident. Phone glued to his ear. He marched to the teller, ignoring the line, and demanded to speak with the branch manager. "I've got a deal closing," he barked. "Funds need to move today." I watched from my spot in line, jaw tight, as the manager, a man I'd built shelves for back when this bank was still fresh paint, came out, calm as a preacher. He led Peter into his office, glass walls giving the whole lobby a front row seat. At first, Peter was all teeth and hand gestures, pointing at documents, waving like he was directing traffic. But then the manager shook his head. Slowly, firm, he tapped the paper, leaned back, folded his arms. Peter's color rose. His gestures grew sharp. Finally, the manager stood, pointed to the door. Conversation over. Peter exploded out into the lobby, face blotched red, eyes darting to see who had witnessed his fall. Too many. The teller line had stretched, every pair of eyes fixed on him. "Problem, Pete?" I called, loud enough to carry. The room chuckled soft, a ripple he couldn't ignore. He spun toward me, fists clenching, but the manager's shadow fell long behind him. He bit back his words, stormed out. The automatic doors signed like they were tired of him, too. I stepped to the counter, slid my check across. The teller, a young man with careful hair, grinned. "Guess he's not used to being told no," he whispered. "Nope," I said, signing steady. "But he'll get plenty of practice." Back home, I opened the trust papers again, read them slow like scripture. Every line was a nail, every clause a brace. Peter could thrash all he wanted, but the walls were closing in. That night, Linda called. I let it ring twice before picking up. Her voice was small like a child's. "Dad, Peter's saying the bank's against him. He says you're making it worse." I closed my eyes, pinched the bridge of my nose. "Sweetheart, the bank didn't give him debt. He did that himself. And I didn't make it worse. I just refused to be part of his mess." There was silence, then a shaky sigh. "I don't know what to do." "You take care of those kids," I said softly. "That's what you do. The rest will fall where it should." After we hung up, I sat at the table with my hammer across my lap. Same as always. I could feel the storm tightening. Peter had lost face at the diner. He'd lost face at the bank. And when men like him start losing, they don't get humble, they get dangerous. I leaned back, let the chair creak. My reflection stared at me from the darkened window. Older, lined, but steady. He thought he could erase me. Instead, he was erasing himself, one public crack at a time. And I was going to make sure the whole town heard it when he finally snapped. The call came just after dawn, while the mist still clung to the rooftops like smoke. Gregory's voice was tight, clipped. "Will, you'd better come down to the courthouse. Peter filed an emergency motion, claims you're withholding consent out of spite. He's trying to drag you in front of a judge." I set my mug down hard enough to slosh coffee on the table. "Spite? That man's debts are his own doing." "Doesn't matter," Gregory said. "He thinks if he makes enough noise, you'll cave. Be here in an hour." The courthouse steps felt heavier than they had in years, though my boots found their rhythm steady and sure. Inside, the air was thick with that old varnish smell, like a church pew that's absorbed a century of prayers. Peter was already there, pacing in the hallway outside the hearing room. His suit was sharp, but his tie sat crooked, like even the fabric had given up on him. He spotted me and smirked, though the edge of desperation showed in his eyes. "Didn't think you'd show," he said. I stopped 3 feet from him, squared my shoulders. "I built half the houses in this town, Peter. You think I'm scared of a room full of wood and nails. He chuckled, but it was brittle. You'll fold. You always do. The bailiff opened the door, called us in. The room was modest, worn benches, flag limp in the stale air. A handful of locals had wandered in to watch. Courthouse drama is better than daytime TV in a small town. The judge listened, patient as oak. Peter's lawyer painted me as bitter, clinging to control. He talked of progress, opportunity, family legacy. He even said I was sabotaging my grandchildren's future. Every word was polished, slick as varnish on rotten wood. Then Gregory stood. His voice was firm, steady, cutting clean. He held up the deed, pointed straight to the clause. Your Honor, this isn't bitterness. It's the law. The donor's consent is required. Without it, there is no sale. The judge leaned forward, reading the line for himself. His gavel tapped once, light but final. Case dismissed. Consent withheld. This court won't overrule a binding clause. A ripple ran through the benches. Whispers, the scrape of boots. Peter's face drained, the flush crawling up his neck. He turned, eyes scanning the room, desperate to find a friendly face. There were none. Outside on the courthouse steps, reporters from the local paper snapped photos. Peter shoved past them, barking, "No comment." His voice cracked, and the crowd chuckled. Gregory clapped my shoulder. That's 3. Public enough for you? I looked out at the square, the pigeons scattering at Peter's stomping exit. It's not about public. It's about truth. But yeah, he's bleeding reputation now. And that's a wound that doesn't close easy. We stood there a long moment, sunlight breaking through the clouds. The town clock told 11, each strike ringing like a nail driven home. Peter thought dragging me into court would break me. Instead, it broke the mask he'd worn for years. And now the whole town had seen the man beneath it, a man crumbling one crack at a time. By September, foreclosure papers were taped to the front door of the house I'd once dreamed would keep our family under one roof. The notice flapped in the breeze like a surrender flag, and neighbors slowed their cars to read it. Word spread quicker than wildfire on dry brush. Peter's empire wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing. I drove by one evening, slow, windows down. The yard I'd mowed for them that first summer was overgrown, weeds curling around the porch posts. The grill where Peter had laughed at me was rusting under a warped cover. A for sale sign leaned sideways in the grass, forgotten, like even the sign had given up. Linda sat on the porch swing, her shoulders folded inward, watching her boys toss a worn football across the patchy yard. When she saw my truck, her eyes lit, then dimmed. She gave a small wave. I nodded back, didn't stop. Not yet. My heart tugged, but I kept the wheel straight. Back at my place, Gregory dropped by, case folder under his arm. He looked tired, but there was pride in his eyes. It's official, he said. The bank's moving in. Peter's debts swallowed him whole. The house will be auctioned in 60 days. I leaned against the counter, listening to the fridge hum. So it's done. Done. Gregory set the folder down, poured himself a cup from my pot without asking. Old friends don't need permission. You've got your justice. He can't sell, can't leverage, can't hide. He's finished. But it didn't feel finished. Not yet, because justice isn't just a fall. It's standing in the dust, making sure the ones who remain understand why the walls came down. That night, Linda showed up at my door. Her knock was soft, timid. When I opened, she was holding the recipe card, her mother's handwriting, wrapped carefully in a plastic sleeve. Dad, she said, voice cracking, I'm sorry for not saying anything that night, for letting him. Her eyes welled. You didn't deserve that. I let the silence stretch, not cruel, just steady. Finally, I stepped aside. Come in. She sat at my table, the same table where Peter had tried to strong-arm me weeks before. The hammer still lay there, as if it belonged more than either of us. Peter says you ruined us, she whispered. I shook my head. He ruined himself. I just didn't let him drag me with him. Her shoulders shook. The boys, they need stability. They need family. I studied her, the same way I'd studied blueprints years ago, looking for weaknesses, for strength, for the truth in the lines. They'll have it. I set things up so they'll be cared for. But Linda, I won't rewrite what he did, or what you didn't stop. She nodded slowly, eyes on the recipe card in her lap. I understand. For the first time in years, I felt something shift, not forgiveness, not yet, but the start of a boundary drawn in ink instead of chalk. When she left, the night was cool, the cicadas quieter now. I stepped onto the porch, looked up at the stars, and thought of Mary. Peter had lost his house, his pride, his standing. Linda had faced me, broken but honest, and I was still standing. But the story wasn't finished, not until the last nail was driven, and I could feel the hammer in my hand, waiting for the final swing. The day of the foreclosure auction drew half the town, same as a Friday night football game. Folks love a spectacle, and Peter had turned his own downfall into one. Pickup trucks lined the courthouse square, men in ball caps leaning against fenders, women clutching iced coffees, as though they were tickets to a show. I parked down the block, walked slow, letting the weight of each step settle. My hammer wasn't with me this time. It stayed on the kitchen table, resting like a sentinel, but I carried its memory in my palm, the grooves worn by decades of work. The auctioneer stood on the courthouse steps, voice booming through a tinny speaker. We have here one single-family residence, corner lot, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. The legalese poured out detached, like the house wasn't someone's heartache nailed together. Peter arrived late, storming up the steps with Linda trailing behind him. His tie was gone, collar unbuttoned, sweat soaking through his shirt. He looked less like a realtor, more like a gambler down to his last chip. He shoved through the crowd, barking at the auctioneer, "You can't do this. It's my house." The auctioneer didn't even flinch. "Sir, the property is under foreclosure order. Step aside." Murmurs rippled. Phones lifted, cameras catching every second. Peter's face reddened. His voice cracked. "This isn't fair. That old man, he's the reason we're here." His finger jabbed toward me in the crowd, trembling with fury. Every head turned. Eyes on me, then back on him. The silence was thick, waiting for a nail to drop. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. "The reason you're here, Peter, is because you built your house on lies." All I did was refuse to hold the ladder. The crowd stirred, low laughter, a few nods. Someone muttered, "Amen to that." Peter lunged like he might rush me, but Linda caught his arm. Tears streaked her cheeks. "Stop, Peter. Please. It's over." He shook her off, wild-eyed. "No. I'll fix this. The gavel cracked against the wooden podium. "Sold!" the auctioneer shouted, "to the highest bidder." Cheers broke out from one corner, real estate investors clapping each other on the back. The house was gone, just like that. Peter staggered, the fight draining out of him. He looked around, searching for sympathy, for a lifeline. None came. Even his friends had melted into the crowd. I turned away, boots steady on the courthouse steps. Behind me, his voice broke, raw and small. "You ruined me, Bill." I didn't stop walking. Because he was wrong. He ruined himself. Back at home, I poured coffee into the chipped mug Mary once favored, sat at the table with the recipe card and the trust documents. The hammer lay there too, quiet as judgment. 3 public humiliations. 3 blows to the mask he wore. But justice isn't measured in humiliation alone. It's measured in what remains standing after the collapse. And there was still one last cut to make. One that would close the frame, seal the story, and leave no doubt who had the final swing. After the auction, the town buzzed like a hive kicked open. You couldn't buy gas or stand in line at the hardware store without hearing Peter's name dragged through the dust. Folks said he'd lost clients, that his phone went unanswered, that he was dodging calls from men with sharp suits and shorter patience. I didn't gloat, didn't need to. Watching a man swing himself into the noose he tied was spectacle enough. One evening, about a week later, I was fixing a loose step on my porch when Linda pulled up. The boys sat in the back seat, faces pressed against the glass, wide-eyed and restless. She got out slow, shoulders slumped, her voice barely carrying over the cicadas. "Dad, we're staying at a motel. Peter's gone most nights, trying to, I don't know, hustle something. The boys are scared. I don't know what to do. I laid the hammer across my thigh, wiped the sweat off my brow. You still got a job? She nodded. The diner keeps me on full shifts, but it's not enough. Not with the debts. Peter won't listen. He keeps saying he'll make a comeback, that you'll crack and hand him money. Her eyes welled. I know you won't. She stopped, throat tight. I just needed to tell you I'm sorry again. For all of it. The apology cut deeper this time, because it sounded like truth. I wanted to reach out, but I also knew pity doesn't rebuild trust. It just papers over cracks. You take care of those kids, I said quietly. That's your job now. Mine is making sure what I've built doesn't rot. She nodded, wiped her face with her sleeve, and went back to the car. The boys waved. I raised a hand, steady, but didn't move closer. Boundaries, like beams, hold best when they're firm. A few nights later, I got another call from Gregory. He's desperate, Peter tried pulling strings at the bank again. Word is, he's talking to loan sharks now. Let him, I said. The man wants to climb out a hole by digging deeper. That's his choice. Gregory hesitated. Just watch yourself. Men like him, when they start running out of rope, they don't look down. They look around for someone else to drag with them. I looked at the hammer on my workbench, the handle polished by my hands over decades. He's already tried. I said, didn't work. The following Sunday, I drove past the house again. It sat empty now, curtains pulled, foreclosure notice faded by sun and rain. The swing set I'd built for the boys listed to one side, one chain broken. The sight twisted something in me. That house had been a promise once, not just boards and shingles, but a covenant, and Peter had poisoned it. I parked by the curb, stepped out, walked across the yard. The grass whispered against my boots, brittle with neglect. I set the swing right, tightened the bolts with a wrench I brought, wiped the rust off the chains. Not for Peter, for the memory of what should have been. When I finished, I stood back, breathing hard, hands stained with rust and oil. The house loomed hollow, stripped of pride. I turned and walked back to the truck, the swing creaking behind me, moving in the evening wind like a ghost. The final reckoning wasn't far now. I could feel it in the air, heavy as a storm waiting just beyond the tree line. And when it broke, I'd be ready, hammer in hand, to drive the last nail home. October brought the kind of chill that seeps into your joints, the kind that makes you remember every nail you've ever driven. I felt it most mornings, but I wore it like armor. Peter, on the other hand, wore his downfall like a torn suit. Everywhere he went, people could see the seams splitting. I was at the hardware store, picking up screws for a small job, when I heard him before I saw him. His voice, one syrup slick, was frayed, sharp, desperate. I need credit, Hank, he barked at the owner behind the counter. You know me. I always make good. The owner, a man I built shelter back when this place first opened, shook his head. Not anymore. Pete, word is you've left too many folks hanging. Cash only. Peter slammed his fist on the counter. The bell over the door jingled as customers turned. His face was blotched, hair unkempt, shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Fine, he spat. I'll take my business elsewhere. Hank's voice carried across the aisles. Might be hard, seeing as how elsewhere heard the same stories. The place chuckled low. Peter spun, caught sight of me by the screw bins. His eyes lit with hate, sharp enough to slice. This is your fault, he hissed, striding toward me. You poisoned this whole town against me. I dropped the screws into my basket, turned slow to face him. You did that yourself, Pete. All I did was stop letting you spend my name like counterfeit money. A murmur ran through the store. Peter's jaw clenched, fists trembling at his sides. He wanted to fight, wanted clawback dignity with his knuckles. But the silence from the others told him the truth. Even if he swung, he'd be swinging alone. He shoved past me, stormed out, the bell over the door giving a weak jangle. I paid for my screws, tipped my cap to Hank, and walked out into the brittle autumn light. That was public humiliation number 3. Not loud like the diner, not official like the courthouse, but maybe the sharpest cut of all, the everyday rejection of a man who'd run out of credit, both financial and human. That night, I sat on my porch, wrapped in an old flannel, hammer resting across my knees. The air smelled of burning leaves. Kids shouting down the block in Halloween costumes too early for the season. Linda called again. This time I answered. "Dad," she whispered, voice ragged. "Peter's not the same. He's drinking heavy, yelling at the boys. I don't know what to do." "Leave," I said, plain and steady. I don't have anywhere. You've got me. You've got the kids. But you've got to make the choice yourself." Her silence stretched, broken only by a muffled sob. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long," I said. When the call ended, I looked at the swing of the porch light across the hammer's steel head. It gleamed, quiet, patient. Peter was cornered now, humiliated, broke, unraveling. But men like him, they don't go down graceful. They claw, they bite, they lash out. And I knew, with the same certainty I know the grain of oak, that the final blow was close. The storm was about to break. And when it did, I'd be the one holding steady, ready to drive the last nail flush. The storm broke on a Wednesday night. Rain hammered the town like nails in the sky. Gutters overflowing. Streets glistening under yellow street lamps. I was at my table, hammer resting where it always did, when the pounding started, not the rain, but my door. I opened it to find Linda, drenched, eyes wild. The boys huddled in the truck behind her, faces pale in the glow of the dash. "Dad," she gasped, he snapped. He came home drunk, screaming, threw a bottle against the wall, shattered right over the boys' heads. I grabbed them and ran. I don't know where else to go. I pulled her inside, shut the door against the storm. My heart thudded, not with fear, but with the calm clarity of a man who's swung a hammer 1,000 times. "You did the right thing," I said. She collapsed into a chair, trembling, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "He kept yelling your name. Said you ruined him. Said he'd make you pay." I poured her a mug of coffee. Steady hands against the chaos outside. "Let him try. He's got nothing left but anger. And anger doesn't build. It only tears down." I stepped back onto the porch, rain slashing my flannel, eyes scanning the street. No Peter. Not yet. But the night felt charged, like a beam sagging under too much weight. I called Gregory. "It's time to make this official." I told him, "I want papers drawn to secure custody for the boys if Linda files. And I want everything sealed tight. No loopholes, no wiggle room. He doesn't get another chance." Gregory didn't argue. "I'll draft it tomorrow. But Will, watch your back tonight. If he's drunk and raging, you're the first door he'll come to." I hung up, slid the deadbolt, and sat back at the table. Linda dozed on the couch. Kids curled in blankets. The hammer lay across my lap, like it had been waiting for this exact night. Hours passed. The rain eased. Then came the sound. Tires on gravel. Headlights sweeping across the window. Peter's truck. He stumbled out, shouted my name into the night. His voice cracked and raw. "Bill, you think you can steal my family? You think you can take everything from me?" Linda stirred, eyes wide with terror. "Dad, don't." I raised a hand, calm. "Stay inside." I stepped out onto the porch, rain dripping from the eaves. Peter staggered up the walk, soaked, hair plastered his forehead. His eyes burned, wild, like a man who'd already lost a fight, but didn't know it yet. "You did this," he screamed, spit flying. "The bank, the town, my wife, everything. You ruined me." I gripped the hammer tight, not to swing, but to anchor myself. My voice was steady, low. "No, Peter, you ruined yourself. All I did was stop you from taking me down with you." For a heartbeat, he just stood there, shaking, fists clenched. The night held its breath. Then he lunged up the steps. And that was a moment, the point where everything we'd built, every lie, every debt, every insult, came crashing toward me like a rotten beam finally giving way. Peter's boots thudded against the porch steps, each one like a drumbeat announcing the collapse of everything he pretended to be. His eyes were wild, pupils blown, spit gathering at the corners of his mouth. "Come on, old man," he shouted, arms out like he wanted to fight. "You've been hiding behind papers and lawyers. Face me now." I didn't move, just held the hammer across my chest, steady as a crossbar. Rain dripped from the eaves, pattering against the wood, masking the shallow breath behind me where Linda and the boys huddled. "Go back to your truck, Peter," I said evenly. "This ends here, but not the way you want." He sneered, teeth flashing under the porch light. "You think this hammer makes you a man? You think you're some kind of hero?" I lifted it slightly, enough for him to see the nicked steel head catch the light. "This hammer built your house. Built the swing your kids played on. Built a life you spat on. It's not a weapon. It's a reminder." That threw him for a second. His face twisted, rage warring with something closer to shame. But shame never lasts long with men like him. He lunged again, hand grabbing for the hammer. I stepped back, letting his momentum crash into the porch post. The wood groaned, paint cracking. He cursed, staggered, turned toward me with fists raised. Inside, Linda's voice cracked. "Peter, stop, please." But he wasn't listening. He never listened. I tightened my grip, not to strike, but to hold my ground. My voice cut through the rain. "You want to prove you're a man? Then own what you did. Own the debts, the lies, the insults. Stop blaming me for the house you set on fire." He froze, chest heaving, rain dripping from his chin. For the first time, the fight flickered. His eyes darted to the window where the boys' faces pressed against the glass, wide and afraid. "Look at them," I said, softer now, pointing with the hammer. "That's who you're destroying. Not me. Them." Something cracked in him then. Not the violent snap of rage, but the hollow break of a man realizing the truth too late. His shoulders slumped, fists unclenched. He stumbled back a step, then another, shaking his head. You turned them against me," he muttered, voice fraying. "No," I said. "You did that yourself." The rain slowed, easing into a drizzle. Peter swayed on the steps, broken but not yet finished. He pointed a trembling finger at me, eyes glassy. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." I held his gaze, steady as a beam anchored in concrete. "It's already over, Peter. You just don't know it yet." He staggered down the steps, climbed into his truck, and slammed the door. The engine roared, tires spitting gravel as he peeled away into the night. I lowered the hammer. Let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Behind me, the boys burst into tears, Linda wrapping them in her arms. I set the hammer back on the table. The steel still damp from the storm. The house was quiet again, but not safe. Not yet. Because Peter's kind of desperation doesn't disappear. It festers. And I knew he'd be back. One last time. The only question was whether he'd return looking for redemption or for ruin. The nights after Peter's storming off were uneasy ones. I slept light, ears tuned to every engine that passed on the road, every branch that scraped the siding. Linda and the boys stayed with me, camped in the living room, their breathing like a chorus of fragile faith. I kept the hammer on the table by the door, as if its weight alone could hold the walls steady. Gregory came by the next morning, his old briefcase under his arm. He looked over the kids' makeshift beds, Linda curled under a quilt, and he nodded like a man taking witness. "It's time we end this," he said, voice low. "I'll file the paperwork tomorrow. Custody provisions, restraining orders. You'll have the law at your back." I poured him coffee, black as tar. The law's already been at my back. It stopped him at the bank, in court, at the auction. But men like Peter don't bow to gavels. They only understand collapse. Gregory studied me a moment, then sighed. "Just keep your wits. Don't let him drag you into the mud." That evening, Linda helped me fold laundry, her hands clumsy with exhaustion. She looked up, eyes red. "Dad, he'll come again. I can feel it." I set down a stack of towels, met her gaze. "Then we'll be ready." The following night, the phone rang close to midnight. The sound cut sharp through the quiet. I answered, expecting silence, maybe heavy breathing. Instead, Peter's voice slurred across the line, soaked in liquor and fury. "You think you won, old man," he growled. "You stole my house, my wife, my kids. Everyone's laughing at me. But I'll show them. I'll show you." "Peter," I said, calm, Steady. You're drunk. Go sleep it off. His laugh was jagged. Cracked glass in the dark. No, I'm coming. And when I get there, we'll see if that hammer of yours can save you. The line went dead. I stood in the kitchen, the phone still warm in my hand. The kid slept on the couch, soft breaths tangled in dreams. Linda stirred, eyes opening, fear already there. Was it him? She whispered. Yes. She sat up, clutching the blanket. What do we do? I walked to the table, picked up the hammer, felt its familiar weight steady my pulse. We wait, and we don't run. Not this time. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the loose gutter, carrying the smell of wet leaves and exhaust from some far-off truck. My porch light flickered once, then steadied. I pulled a chair to the doorway, sat with a hammer across my knees, eyes fixed on the gravel road stretching into the dark. The night held its breath, heavy, electric, as if the whole town knew the final swing was coming. And somewhere out there, headlights would soon cut through the trees, bringing Peter back for the last time. This time, there'll be no escape, no bluff, no stage to charm. Only the truth, nailed down once and for all. The headlights came just after 2 a.m, carving through the trees like a blade. Gravel spit as Peter's truck tore up the road, engine howling too loud for the hour. I rose from my chair, hammer in hand, and stepped onto the porch. Behind me, I felt Linda's eyes, the boy's small breast caught in the dark. The truck skidded sideways, stopped crooked at the foot of my yard. Peter stumbled out, a bottle in one hand, fury in the other. His shirt clung with sweat and rain, his face raw, eyes wild. "Bill!" he screamed, voice breaking. "You think you beat me? You think you can take my life and walk away proud?" I stood at the top of the steps, steady as the oak beams I'd spent a life raising. "I didn't take your life, Peter. You burned it down yourself." He staggered closer, bottle raised like a weapon. "You ruined me." The porch light threw him into sharp relief. Once the slick realtor, now a broken man, a shadow of borrowed pride. The crowd wasn't here. No court, no diner, no bank. Just him and me, the night and the truth. "You humiliated me in front of my own family," he shouted, voice hoarse. "Called me a liar." I lifted the hammer, not in threat, but in reminder. Its head gleamed on the bulb, scarred and true. "This hammer built your house, Peter. The one you lost because you care more about appearances than foundations. You didn't just insult me. You spit on everything it stood for." He stopped at the bottom step, chest heaving, bottle trembling in his grip. "Then finish it," he snarled. "Hit me. Be the old man with a hammer, who finally mattered." I felt the weight of years pressing down. Mary's laughter in the kitchen, Linda's childhood games on half-built frames, the boy's wide eyes at the swing set. All of it balanced on this moment. I lowered the hammer. "No," I said. "You don't get to make me like you." His face crumpled, fury twisting into something worse, shame. He hurled the bottle at the steps. It shattered, glass spraying across the porch. The boys whimpered inside. Linda gasped. Peter stumbled back, chest rising and falling, but no more words came. He turned, staggered toward his truck, cursing under his breath, and drove off into the dark. The silence that followed was vast, broken only by the creak of the porch and the faint hum of cicadas. I stood there a long time, hammer resting against my thigh, until the taillights vanished into nothing. Inside, Linda whispered, "Dad, you could've." "I could've," I said, "but real justice doesn't swing in anger. It stands. It holds." I set the hammer on the table beside the deed, the trust papers, and Mary's recipe card. 3 relics of a life. What was given, what was protected, and what was remembered. Weeks later, the boys ran to the grass by my new cottage at the lake, their laughter ringing across the water. Linda sat on the porch steps, hair loose in the breeze, watching them with tired but honest eyes. I leaned back, the lake carrying the reflection of the setting sun, the hammer mounted above the door, not as a weapon, but as a symbol. A lifetime of work had led to this. Not vengeance through blood, but justice through endurance. Peter had lost everything, his house, his pride, his mask. I had gained something rarer, peace. As the boys' voices carried on the wind, I closed my eyes and breathed deep. The final nail was driven, and the frame of my life, at last, stood true. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.